All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to session 2.4. It is 2.4. If this is your first session with us, I highly recommend you go back and watch the earlier sessions first. Everything we're going to be doing today is directly building upon the solutions that we have been building so far in this session. One thing I did not put in the description for this, but we are going to do some work with our iOS layouts today as well. So if you haven't already watched that video about downloading FileMaker Go on your phone, please make sure you check that out as well. So we will do a little bit of that today. Of course, if you don't have it ready to go, that's not a big deal. We can always you can always come back and watch this later. So today's video is going to be all about focus charts and focus documentation. So far in our solutions, we've handled work notes, we've handled kind of the basics of a lighting paperwork, pre-production paperwork kind of program / maybe in production paperwork program. Today we're going to be really focusing on the kind of documentation we can create for focus charts, and just to, even if you're not printing charts, just to keep kind of a database of the information about your lights and where they're focused, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I've got open right here. This is the basically where we left off on our last session. Of course, yours probably looks way different than mine. I'm not spending a whole lot of time making it look nice. I'm just kind of throwing stuff in here to get you the bones in. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a table of focus areas. So I'm going to open up my database manager for that. And then I'm going to go to my tables tab and I'm going to create a new table. Now this is what I'm going to be explaining today is how I like to handle focus areas. You might not do it the same way. You might have a different school of thought, a different way of doing it, and that's fine. Hopefully you'll still get something from this. So I'm going to create a new table called focus areas. And then in those, I'm going to, again, just delete the already made fields. And I'm going to make one that's area name. Let's see what else we want. Maybe area note. We want an image for that area. And that image is going to be a container field. Basically, the way I usually treat these focus areas is that I treat them as letters. So like areas A through X or something like that, starting downstage right. And then if I know a light is going to be focused into that area, I make sure that in that focus field on that instrument record, either in LightWrite or Vectorworks, or once I get it into FileMaker, that associated focus area is listed in that field. Okay, so we got area image, area name, area note. Let's do maybe a stage left, stage right dimension. That's going to be a text field. And upstage, downstage. And we might find that we need more later on, but we can always come back in and add those. So I'm starting out with image, name, note, a stage left, stage right location, and an upstage, downstage location. And then, of course, after that, I want to go ahead and define a relationship. So here you see my focus areas is already on my relationships graph. And we already have a focus field in our instrument table. If you don't have a focus field on your instrument table, it's probably because you don't maybe you don't use it in LightWrite. You can always go into your tables manager and go ahead and add it real quick. So just making sure that there is a focus text field in your instrument records, and of course a focus photo as well, which I'm pretty sure we all have. Focus status also super useful. Okay, so I'm going to define this relationship. Of course, area name is going to be related to focus in our instruments table. And then I'm going to do just a little bit of housekeeping here to make this a little cleaner. Going to move this right there. Great. So now our focus area name is related to our focus field on our instrument records. Okay, and just double check one last time. Focus areas, that all looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to click OK, and of course it seems as if nothing happened, but as we know, it went ahead and created an empty layout for us that we're probably just going to delete rather than starting from scratch with it. But we know that it worked because it gave us that layout. Okay, next thing we want to do is, if you remember I guess it was 2 weeks ago was the last time we did these, we created some value lists for various things in our show. So positions, for example, we created value lists for, we created a Gobo value list, and those value lists allowed us to quickly grab all of the names of that particular thing within our instrument records. So I'm going to do the same thing with my focus areas. I'm going to go to Manage Value Lists, And just as a quick refresher, if we look at this again, for example, positions in use, this was basically just taking every unique value from the instruments table position field and putting those into a list for us. So I'm going to create same thing, focus areas in use, and those are going to be values from instruments focus. Focus, great. Simple as that. So now I have focus areas in use from field instruments focus. And again, looks like nothing happened. One thing I am going to want to do, because this instrument import that we did from our LightWrite file did not have any focus areas in, I'm going to sort these by channel, and then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to assign a couple of quick focus areas just so I see some information. I'm going to delete these follow spots real quick. Okay, so channel 1, I'm going to assign that to focus area A. Channel 2, I'm going to assign to focus area B. I'm going to do 5 of them. C, D, and E. So basically, again, I'm just putting some dummy data in there. So 1 through 5 are associated with the focus areas A through E. Great. Okay, so now what's happening behind the scenes, now that that focus area field has some data in it, that value list has been populated with A through D. And if we went ahead, and I guess I could show, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you that kind of as proof. If I just made another drop down here, and let's just say it's from focus areas in use, and I looked at it, there they are, A, B, C, D, E. So you see that that's happening all in the background. Great. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to want to do, of course, is I'm going to want to create a layout to go ahead and document all of my focus areas on. I got to have some kind of way to put in that information like names, locations, dimensions, etc., etc. So rather than using this built-in focus areas layout that's already been created for me, I'm just going to duplicate one that already exists. So I'm going to go into my layout editor. And let's use the positions one. That was kind of a nice one that had some lines. It already has our buttons on it, our headers, etc. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to call it focus areas. And I'm going to make sure that I'm looking at records from my focus areas table. So focus areas, focus areas. And then I'm going to open it up. And as soon as I open it, I'm going to close the other one so I don't accidentally, I'm not working in the wrong thing. Okay, and now I'm going to go into my layout editor by doing Command L, and I'm going to start rearranging some of the stuff that's on here. So right away I see, okay, well, I've got my page margins are turned on, so that's kind of annoying. I'm going to turn that off. That looks a little bit better. And we say, let's say focus areas. Okay, and I'm just going to delete those, maybe make this a little bit bigger. So again, this is kind of a, we could have done this the other way. We could have just used the layout that was there and pulled stuff in like we've done before, but I just want to show you a couple of different ways of accomplishing that. So position name, this would be area name. Looks like these are not center aligned. Oops. There we go. Area name. And then I'm just going to make this relate to that area name field. And maybe since it's just going to be a single letter in my case, I could make this way bigger. You could put whatever you want in this. If you want to number your focus areas, if you want to give them more descriptive names, all of that is very possible. It's all the same. Okay, and then over here with my field insertion, what is this called? The field menu, I guess. The name is blanking on me. I can get there by doing Command K. Actually, I can get the name right here. Command K, Command K. Anyway, I can click and just drag these things in. So I can say area note. And this would be things like, let's say you wanted to give it a descriptive note, like maybe, downstage center or downstage left. You could also maybe have a scenic note field in this table as well, if there's a particular thing about scenery. Again, totally up to you, however it works for your particular solution. Okay, now we want probably our image. And I'll show you why we have an area image in a second. You might be asking yourself, why have an area image and then also have individual focus images? Mike, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it will in a moment. So area image, and then let's go ahead and do our whatchamacallits, our dimensions here. So stage right, stage left, this would be something like, you know, -10 right, and then upstage, downstage would be, you know, -2 down or 2 down, or however you denote those things. Just like that. Okay. So now, of course, I've got no data here, so can't really see anything. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back into browse mode, and I'm going to create a new one, and we're just going to call this area A. And we'll say area A is downstage right. Don't have an image yet. Maybe this is 10 foot stage right. And maybe it's right on the plaster line. So I say 0. And then I make an area B. And maybe this is stage right quarter. This is 5 foot stage right. Also on the plaster line. You get where I'm going with this. C. This is downstage center. That's at 0, 0. And perhaps you just want to use math here. Maybe you could just say positive, negative. Totally fine. Field picker. Thank you, William. That's what it's called. Stage left. But yeah, maybe you do, you know, maybe you do whatever works for you, whatever you typically do will work here. And then finally E, and this is downstage left. And maybe that is 10 foot stage left, again at the plaster line. Okay, got some stuff in there now. So before we go much further, I want to go in and I want to update a couple of things about this layout. You remember we've been using some of these buttons on every single layout, and we've been making them kind of smart to know what layout we're in and what we're working with. Do the exact same thing here. I'm gonna go back into my layout editor. I'm gonna look at this delete button, and we see that this was performing the script delete with confirmation. So before I change anything about that, I'm gonna open my scripts editor back up, Command-Shift-S, and I'm gonna look for that script. Where is it? Delete with confirmation. And you see I've got a bunch of things in here: work note, instruments, gobo, color swatch, etc., etc. I'm just gonna copy paste this last else if, and I'm gonna add an area. And I'm going to say focus area so we keep the name the same throughout the whole thing. And then I can set these variables. Don't really need anything in that first slot. Maybe this is just focus area. And then the second one is focus areas, area name. Great. So just like that, I've updated this script to be able to be used on yet another layout. And you can see you could get really, you could do a lot with this as you go through. And I'm going to save that, and I'm going to change on my delete button, I'm going to change that script parameter over to focus area. Now when I go back into browse mode here, I'm going to just create a dummy one here, and I'm going to call this name. And when I hit delete, are you sure you want to delete focus area name? Yes, I do. So great, we've already modified this script to work for that without having to do a whole lot of work. What else do we have on this layout we need to look at? We've got this Get from Instruments button. So we did this with some of our other layouts. You know, we had a, we had our positions, we did gobos, we did all that stuff, being able to pull all that information right from our instrument records. So I'm going to do the same thing here with my focus areas. So once again, I'm just going to look at how this script is laid out, and it looks like really all I have to do is pass a script parameter along. That's the title of our value list. So that was focus areas in use. So let's copy this else if script parameter equals focus areas, then I'm going to go to layout, focus areas, and just double check here. Really, 3 things I need to update. I need to update this one, and then here, this set field. So I'm going to update my focus areas, area name. That's really all I have to do. We were smart enough that we made this script pretty target agnostic when we made it. So you see it does a lot of that setup for us and everything. All I have to do is copy paste that and update those 3 lines, and I am pretty much good to go. And then I'll come in here and I'm going to change the script parameter on that button over to focus areas. Okay. Great. I probably shouldn't have put these in there yet. I'm just going to delete these really quickly so we can make sure that it works. Get from instruments. There we go. A, B, C, D, E. And I'll just do this real quick. DSL, excuse me, DSC, DSR, DSR quarter, center, and DS. Now you might be noticing this kind of is hard to read when we are having all these fields like this. So what I can actually do, I can come into my layout setup, and I can uncheck this delineate fields on current record only, which is great. And then, yeah, that's good. Great. And then if I click on the body here, and we did this before, I can change my alternate row background color to maybe be just slightly a little bit darker. So when I come in here, there we go. And that's a little bit easier to read. Let's see, 10 foot right. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 5 foot right. 0. 5 foot left. Sorry. 10 foot left. Okay, so we've got our focus areas in here. Again, these were pulled in directly from our instruments. And of course, you know, we had our light right import script here that we had before. We could, of course, go ahead and add another perform script to this, create things with the parameter of focus areas. Now it'll do that all automatically for us when we create, or when we do our light right import for the first time. Lovely. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start thinking about, okay, what do we want to use this area image for? So I have kind of over here in Vectorworks, I have a little dummy stage set up with some focus areas. You see those focus areas are right across the plaster line, kind of just the way we laid it out in our document there. So maybe what I do to create that focus area image is I grab area A, and maybe I fill it with, let's say, maybe a highlight color, something like that. Maybe it's at 50% opacity, something like that. Now what I could do, I'm going to take a quick little screenshot of this stage layout, like that, and I'm just going to drop that in right there in my area image. And let's see what's the easiest way to do this. Let's just move this over. And do the same thing for B. And I've got my screenshots set up on my computer to be Command-Shift-4. Set them up however you want them. And then, of course, if I was doing this for real, maybe I would make a nice Vectorworks layout where it's it's always the same size, or I know that I'm always grabbing the same region on my screen. For our purposes today, I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. In here is C. So hopefully you're starting to get the idea right away of how this could be super helpful for us. D and E. And of course, if I had my whole stage this way, I would just spend the time to make all of those. And there we go. Okay, I've got all of those in. That looks good. Okay, what's next? So next we need to go in and actually take a look at how we can start showing this information back on our instrument records. We've set up that relationship, but so far we haven't really done much with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in. We had started to make a focus assistant layout before. This is where we explored how the tabs, the tabbed layout objects work. I'm going to make another tab here that's going to be basically just everything focus related. Excuse me. So to do that, of course, I'm going to come into my layout manager. I'm going to double click on this tab area that we made, and I'm just going to add one more tab called focus. I'm going to put that right after the initial information because it's kind of important. Of course, that's blank right now. It's good. Okay, so what information do we want on that focus? Of course, we probably always want to see what channel number we're working with. That's important. Maybe an instrument type. Probably the purpose, the color, the gobo, of course the focus area, and the focus status. So I'm just going to copy those things from this first tab. I'm going to paste them over here on this tab. And of course you could spend some time making sure they're all aligned with some guides and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that today. And then let's lay this out kind of in a pleasing fashion. Let's see here. Doop, 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 doop. color. And of course, Gobo does not need to be that big. Something like that, maybe. And you could bring your color swatch over if you wanted to as well. Let's do that real quick. Always love having a little color swatch handy. I'm gonna move all these labels up on top so I have some more room. Color, and our swatch, and our Gobo. Okay. Now I'm purposely leaving these out of here for now. I'm actually going to move them off of the layout for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create basically just a little rectangle here. It doesn't really do anything. It's just a way to kind of highlight my information. But I'm going to make a box specifically for all of this all of this focus stuff we've been doing. So I'm just going to give it maybe a slightly larger border. That's all I really need. I don't need anything else special about it. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to start pulling these other fields in. And maybe it might be easier if I just copy paste this channel field so I have a nice bold field. Call that focus. Close enough. Focus. Of course, we have our focus status, which remember we set up with a value list to either be focused or not focused. Super handy. Oops. Make that smaller. Just kind of move this over for now. Okay, and now I could start pulling in some of those fields from that other table that I have. Because we created that relationship, I can do this without a portal. I can just come in here and I can say, okay, area image, show up here. And now the area image, of course, is going to be different than the actual individual focus image of the light. And I think it's useful to have both. It doesn't really take very much time at all to drop those area images in, but being able to look at a focus chart or look at this screen and see kind of roughly where that light is supposed to be, I think is super handy. I'm just going to make these all a little bit bigger, like that. And I'm just going to move this to be focus photo. So now if I just quickly come back into browse mode and let's go all the way back to channel 1 here. If I look at this focus tab, there we go right away. Now we've got that area images showing up there because that relationship has said anytime a area is, if the area matches, then go ahead and show that. So super helpful already. Of course, that probably wants to be center aligned. Okay, and now we can start adding some of those other things. Now this is where it's going to really depend on how you work and what works for you. So I'm going to show you what I do. So typically most of the shows that I'm working in are very system based. I've got a set focus areas, and there are similar systems of light there's a system of light going into each area in a very similar way. So I know that, there's going to be front light focused into A, and it's going to be focused on exactly the same spot. Now, if I was doing a show that maybe didn't have specific focus areas like that, and I needed to have individual, center of beam measurements for each things, I could definitely do that. You would just need to make make the appropriate fields for that. So what I'm going to show you right now is I could just pull this stage left, stage right dimension in. Oops. Stage left, stage right. I can also pull my upstage, downstage in. And make that about the same size. And then, of course, when I go back into browse mode, it's going to show me those dimensions that I have in there. So this is useful if, again, like every light that's going into A is centered on the same area. It also could be useful to have this, you could have a separate set of fields on your instrument record for that measurement if you wanted to. And you could even probably get creative with some calculation fields, and you could say, okay, this is the base, and then we added 2 feet for it, or 2 foot to the X value or something like that, and it could calculate that for you. That's totally up to you if you want to do that. But what I do want on this layout is I want information about my shutter cuts. I want information about what my edge is doing, if the barrels run in, run out. If it's a Fresnel, for example, I want to know if it's a spot or a flood. If it's a par, I want to know what axis the beam beam is going at. So to do that, I want those individual pieces of information directly attached to the instruments themselves. So I'm actually going to come into my instrument table, and I'm going to add some additional fields. So on my instrument table, I'm going to make a focus. I'm going to call these focus underscore, let's say, shutter cuts, or just shutters. I could have focus edge. I could have focus beam, or zoom, excuse me. And I could have focus axis. We'll call this beam axis. Focus axis. So I've got 4 new fields: focus axis, focus edge, focus shutters, focus zoom. And now I could start putting those onto this layout. And again, since we're calling this our focus assistant, this is what you could have open while you're focusing, and you could quickly, click these things as you're focusing those lights. Or if you're going back through and doing the documentation later, you could do that. And then of course, in a little while, I'm going to show you how you could add this right over to your mobile layout as well. Okay, so first thing is shutters. I'm going to put that, let's make these maybe they stack on top of each other. Something like this. Now, if you wanted to, you could also, of course, you could make 4 separate ones or 5 separate ones. You could have shutter, for one field for each shutter, and then a rotation if you wanted to. I'm just going to call it shutter cuts for now. And maybe make that center aligned. And then rather than dragging these over from the field picker, I'm just going to copy paste these. That way I have the same, I don't have to go in. Crap. I'm going to align these real quick. There we go. I'm just going to hold down Option. I'm going to, drag that down like that. And then the next one we have, this is going to be edge. Stupid, Mike. You got to keep your stuff aligned. There we go. Focus edge. And then what else do we have? We have zoom, focus zoom. And what we could do, I don't know if we've talked about conditionally showing or hiding anything. I'll do that in a second. I wasn't planning on it, but this is an excellent use case for that. And then finally, axis. And that's focus axis. Now, great. Now, if we go back to browse mode here, you see we've got these fields. But, shutter cuts, yeah, maybe it makes sense to have an edit box like that, because maybe I could say off of portal, something like that, or, 1 foot onto port. I could type different things there. But things like edge, zoom, and axis, those are pretty much always going to be one of several different predefined values. So that right there, these 3 things, it's an excellent use case for another set of value lists. So let's start out with the edge, and I'm going to go into manage value lists, and I'm going to call this value list focus edge. And let's see, what do we have for an edge? We can go all the way out. We could say half out. We could say middle. We could say half in. We could say all the way in. Again, you label these whatever nomenclature you use to document your shows. You get the idea. Barrel all the way out, barrel all the way in, and 3 steps in between. Let's do a focus zoom. And that would be, I guess, spot at the smallest. Half spot, mid, half flood, and flood. I do like to try to keep these as short as possible, and you're going to see why in a second. So yeah, you could put full flood. Maybe you just do FF. You again figure out what works for you. But the shorter the names are, the better they're going to be able to work. The easier they're going to be to work with in your layouts, by far. And then finally, we have focus axis. Okay, and maybe we have left, right. Maybe we have up, down. Maybe we have some going that way. Maybe we have some going that way. So I've got left, right, up, down, diagonal this way, diagonal that way. Great. Valueless. And now I'm going to assign these fields to those value lists. Now, so far, all the value lists we've been doing have been drop-down lists, and that could certainly work for this. I could come in here and I could say focus edge, and I could say, give me an arrow. When I go in and look at it, I could click, and I could click in which one I wanted, but that's an extra click that I might not want. You know, when you're in the heat of the moment trying to document this stuff, you want to try to minimize the amount of clicks you need to make. So rather than having to click on that down arrow, I'm going to use the radio button set option here. And now, of course, now you see why I said we need to be aware of how big you make your or how long your labels are, because you want to try to make it fit and look good. So there we go. There's all those. Do the same thing here. We'll make this a radio button, and this is going to be zoom. Maybe we need to make that a little bit bigger. And then, of course, axis, radio button, values from axis. So now when we go back into browse mode again and we look at it, now I can click a single time for each one of those. So I've basically cut my time in half. Of course, with the radio buttons, it doesn't allow you to put other values in, but in this particular case, I don't know that I would ever want to. You know, the more values you have, the more confusing your documentation gets. Sure, something might not be, you know, maybe you want one more step between out and half out. Totally up to you. It really just depends on how precise you like to be. Okay, so one more quick thing I'll show you before we move on. Let's say, okay, we know that, you know, channel 1 is a source 4 par. It doesn't really have an option for the edge to be ran in or out, nor does it really have an option for the zoom. If it was a parnell, maybe it did. So really all this has is, all that we really could adjust about this is an axis. So what I could do, I could come in here and I could, let's say, grab all four of these guys, and the shutter cuts really as well, because there's not going to be shutter cuts with a par, unless you, of course, you put a barn door on it. And then over here in my data tab, there's this little box that says hide object when. And so I can specify a calculation of when I do not want those objects to show up on any particular layout. So let's say, just for simplicity's sake for this, I don't want this to show up if instrument type equals, of course I forgot what we called it before, source 4 par. And let me see, that might be the wrong word to use. Okay, source 4 par, no, okay, I'm just gonna copy paste this. You might be thinking there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. You couldn't list every single fixture type, and there is. I'll get to that in a second. But you see now, right now, those fields have disappeared. But as I start thumbing through these records, eventually I'm going to, let me just jump through here. Eventually I'm going to get to other kinds of lights, and you see that those fields come back for a source 414. Just like that. So what you could do, so you know, it'd be impossible to make something that you don't want to list every single type of every single light in this. That would be a really long calculation. It would be a little ridiculous. So what perhaps you could do is you could make in your instrument types, in that instrument types field, maybe, or excuse me, instrument types table, maybe you have some kind of meta types. Maybe you have spots, maybe you have washes, and then you formulate those calculations here based on that. So, you know, if the fixture type, if the fixture meta type is a spot, then don't show me the axis. If it's a wash, then don't show me these other things. Or you could just leave them on, doesn't really matter. One of the challenges with the radio buttons is there's not, oh yeah, you can, I guess that's really the only way to clear it without making a script to do it. So like if I accidentally clicked upstage, downstage here, that is there. Looks like I can cut that because it just kind of treats it as a place to hold values, or you could make a little button that clears that field for you. But there's not a quick and easy way other than making those buttons or hitting cut to clear those values on a radio set. But you get the idea. Okay, what's next? I guess next up we want to go ahead and look at our mobile layout. So again, if you don't have the app, this app unfortunately only works for iOS. So you can do it on an iPad or an iPhone. I'm going to be using an iPhone 11 for this. The app is, of course, FileMaker Go. It looks like this guy right here. The FileMaker Go 19 is the one I'm using. And as long as you're on that same local network, you can, your computer should show up. If it doesn't show up, then over within FileMaker, you're going to want to go to Sharing, Share with FileMaker clients, and just make sure that network sharing is turned on. If you have more than one file open, of course, you can specify what users of your file can open different things, but I'm just going to make sure it's on. And then, of course, over here on my phone, it shows up for me as a local host. And when I tap on it, I'm going to open up session 2.4, and there we go. This is that work note layout that we made a long time ago. Pretty great. I'm going to get rid of this animated background really quickly because that is using a whole lot of system processing power for me. Stand by. There we go. That's a little better. My computer is a little calmer. Okay, so what I'm going to want to do first here is I want to go ahead. I want to create a layout. I want to create the layout that I'm going to be using to drop in focus photos on my phone. Or if you're doing an iPad, maybe you're walking around on stage with that iPad, and that's where you're doing your documentation. So I'm gonna basically make a layout that allows me to do both of those things. So we go into mobile layouts here. We see we already have an iPhone work note layout. We made it kind of responsive. And if you look over here, that's that layout that's on our phone, of course. You can thumb through different instrument records, et cetera, et cetera. So why reinvent the wheel? Why not just copy paste this layout and then edit the things we need to edit about it? So I'm going to open up my layout manager again, Command-Shift-L, and I'm going to make a new folder. Oops, cancel. I'm going to make a new folder, and this is going to be instruments. I said a new folder, and that's going to be called instruments. And then I'm just going to duplicate iPhone work notes. I'm going to move it up here, and I am going to change that to be called iPhone focus. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are looking at records on our instrument table. Do this real quick so you can see it a little better. So again, we're setting this up so iPhone focus is looking at instrument records from our instrument table. Okay. Now, of course, I'm going to open that, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close the other one so we don't accidentally mess it up. So I'm making sure I'm on iPhone focus layout here. I'm going to go ahead and start editing. Now, we've already got a lot of the fields that we need set up on that Focus Assistant layout we just made. So I'm going to go to Window, New Window, and I'm just going to open up that existing Focus. Oops, I'm going to open up that Focus Assistant so I can quickly copy paste the things that I want to see, or that I want to see in this other layout. So I'm going to split screen this a little bit, something like that. So I got this over here. I'm going to change this to focus. Okay. And let's think about how we want to lay this out. Do I want to, I probably want to have kind of a similar thing to what I did over here. I want that channel information maybe show up at the top of my screen, but all this other stuff, maybe I want to make that scrollable. So in order to do that, I'm just going to save, what do I want to save about this? I'll save these three fields, I guess. I guess I'll just delete everything else from here. And then I'm going to create a new layout part. So right now we have our head, or we have a top navigation, we have a body, and we have a footer. I'm going to add a header to that. So now I have top navigation, header, body, footer. And in this header, this is where I'm going to put some of this information here. Maybe channel, instrument type, purpose, color, swatch, gobo. And of course, to fit on the phone, I got to get a little more creative with it. So do something like that. And you know what? I don't necessarily need instrument type for this particular layout. Probably just, maybe we just do purpose. Not even going to do a label here. Color. And gobo. And of course, we'll put the swatch in just because I love our swatches. Something like that. Okay, so now that's going to be a nice little header that we can scroll underneath. And we're going to go ahead and look at the body here. Now, you could do tabbed layouts within your mobile layouts as well. You know, you could make maybe one that has work notes on it, maybe one that has focus on it. For today, we're going to keep it kind of simple. We're just going to make this focus, so I'm not going to worry about doing any kind of tabs or anything. But okay, I'm going to go ahead and start bringing some of these fields into this layout. Okay, so we have our focus area here. I'm just going to center this so it's nice and big. And then, let's see, we have our focus status. Of course, that's super handy. No. Copy, paste, not drag, Mike. There we go. Now, as you're designing these mobile layouts, one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that fingers are small. You know, fingers are going to have less tolerance or need more tolerance than your mouse cursor is. So I might make this nice and big so that I can tap this, it'll drop down easier. I could even, you know, with that focus status thing, maybe I make this a radio button instead. So now I have focused, not focused. You know, you could play around with all of those different things, whatever works for you. Okay. And then I'm going to show some of these fields again. I've got my left, right, up, down. Stage left, stage right. Stage down, stage. I'll tell you what, I'll show you a quick little way. So if I take all of these things, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make sure that they're all center aligned in their boxes, and then under the ruler here, I can align them all centered to each other, and then move them around, make sure they're aligned centered to my page. Super handy. Like this, and of course, you know, you could put these next to each other. You could do all that kind of stuff. I'm just laying them out this way so it's easy to see for now. Just like this. And once again, we're going to make sure that's all center aligned, and we're going to align it all like that. Boom. Okay. And I'm going to make the body a little bit bigger, and I'm going to grab my area image. My area image here. Probably doesn't need to be that big. Something like that. And then I'm going to have my, oh, that's a work note photo. I don't want that. Yeah, I really should have styled all this stuff. That's all right. Okay. And here, this is, of course, going to be my focus photo. Okay. Lovely. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like in real life. So when I go to browse mode here, you can see that, well, okay, I got to do some work to make it responsive, but for now I'm just gonna test it. Within iOS over here, I'm gonna click on my FileMaker dropdown, go to Layout, Mobile Layouts, Instruments, iPhone Focus. Now you can see there it is, just like that for me. Actually, I probably should have made these buttons at the bottom. They should actually be a bottom navigation part and not a footer part, because then they'll stay anchored to the bottom here. Get rid of footer. Great. Now the cool part about this is when you're looking at this split screen, watch what's going to happen. As soon as I go into browse mode on the computer, watch my phone. It's automatically going to update that layout to be whatever changes I just made. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so first things first, I want to go ahead and make these fields so they fill up the width of my page. So to do that, I'm just going to grab everything and I'm going to anchor it top, left, and right. There we go. Now you see it's kind of zoomed into that. You got to play around with the radio buttons a little bit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting the layout looking exactly perfect. You know, it's going to be different depending on what you're working on. But if we go, let's say we go, we don't have any sort buttons on here, do we? Okay, I'm going to do a quick find here. So I'm going to click the little top hourglass at the top right, and I'm going to say find channel 1 Enter. There we go. And now you see there's our information that we were looking for before. There's that stuff we had put in there. And again, you might want to play around with, you know, you could create, instead of having this drop down, for example, you could create two nice big buttons, one that sets that field to focused, one that sets it to not focused, things that are going to make it easier in the moment. Same thing for all of these. You know, it can be hard to hit these little radio buttons. So maybe you make a series of wide buttons that have those different values associated with them. Definitely possible. Great. So now we have our area image in there and we have our focus photo. So the next step that we're going to want to do here is to take those buttons that we had on our layout. Go back into our layout manager here. We want to take these buttons that we kind of just moved off the screen, and we want to put them back in here so that we could actually use them to drop a photo in using our phone. So using the phone isn't necessarily the most effective way to do, you know, 400 lights worth of photos, but it is a way. Let's say you only have 50 lights. You know, it wouldn't take that long to pop through and do it. I did mention this in the first time we did a phone tutorial here, that unfortunately within FileMaker there is no way to script the flash not turning on. You can obviously do it, you know, when you're taking the photo itself, but there's no option still in FileMaker 19 to not have the flash be automatic. So the way I worked around that is for a while I used my old iPad that didn't have a flash, and of course it didn't flash. But we'll get there for now. Okay, so real quick, let's look and see. I can go ahead and close this other thing so my screen isn't so complicated. I can close my layout editor, and I'm going to leave my script workspace open because we're about to use a script. Let's look and see what script these two buttons were calling. They were using the add photo script. So let's find that. Here it is, add photo. So now I have a decision to make. So right now this script that we already have written corresponds specifically to that worknote layout that we made before. You know, it has it puts in photos directly to those worknote photo fields. So I could do one of two things. I can either make this script a little smarter, so maybe it knows what layout I'm on before I call it, or I could just copy paste the script and have a separate script run for focus photos versus a separate script that runs for worknote photos. So you might be thinking, because of everything I've showed you so far, that I'm going to want to make this script smarter. That's actually not what I'm going to want to do here. I'm going to copy paste this and just duplicate the script. And the reason for that is because later on down the road, I might want to make way more complicated things happen with our photos. And I just want to set myself up to have a totally separate script that's available to me to do that in. Because doing this right here would be a bunch more if statements, and then once you start adding more steps into that, it's just going to be really confusing to figure out and look at. So I'm going to keep this one kind of as is. Maybe I'll rename this and I'll say mobile worknote. I promise I can type, you guys. It's just when I'm doing these streams, for some reason I lose the ability to type. And I'm going to call this one mobile focus photo. Great. So in mobile focus photo, all I have to do here is change where these things are inserting to. So this is inserting into instruments, focus photo, and inserting into instruments, focus photo. Okay. And again, we have one for the camera, one for the library. So I'm going to save that new script that we have. I'm going to come back over here into my layout editor, and I'm going to leave the parameters exactly as they are, but I'm going to make sure that it's targeting focus photo instead for each one of these buttons. Great. So now if we jump back over to our mobile layout, of course, when I commit this, what's going to happen? Why didn't that update? Well, that's interesting. Let's try to go to the layout again. Let's go to layout. I'm going to go to the worknote one real quick, and then I'm going to jump back over to my instrument one. Okay, now the buttons are there. For some reason, it just didn't update. That's fine. So now what I should be able to do here is I should be able to hit take photo. And there we go. A beautiful view out my window with my plants. And I'm going to take a photo, hit use, and it's going to drop that photo right into that field. Now, it's not showing up on my phone. What I found yesterday, I think this, I've got the new iOS on this phone, so it was not always working on the first try, but I found that if we go, as I scrolled around, it was indeed working. I just don't know why it wasn't actually showing up for you on this particular thing. Let's do this. Let's sort these by channel real quick. So see, it's there. For some reason on this, because I'm on the beta iOS, it's not showing up on my layout. It did end up yesterday for me as I went from record to record. It did start showing up, but you get the idea. It does work. So it drops that photo into that container for me. So pretty cool. And then of course I can do the same thing with a photo from my photo library. So just like that, I could easily sit there and let's say I've got a relatively a small show, maybe 50 lights, 60 lights, something like that. I could easily spend a half hour just sitting out in the house and quickly snapping a photo of every single focus. It wouldn't take that long, and the amount of documentation I would get would be super, super handy. Oh, and Lee pointed out, yes, we want to edit this delete button down here. And actually, I don't think, yeah, these delete buttons we did in our mobile layout actually only just do a delete. We never actually linked those back to our master deletion script. So I'm not going to worry about it for right now, but if you want to, you could go in and instead of just making this a single step, link those buttons back to your master delete script, like we did with our regular computer layouts. So great. Get rid of my notifications here so you don't see hockey scores. Okay. What's next? We have one more thing to cover today, and that is going to be how to actually lay these things out into a report. So I am going to call this iPhone Focus thing good for now. And I'm going to come over to, let's go back to my Focus Assistant for a second. Back in browse mode. And of course, with that Focus Assistant, when I look at it here, that container, there it is. I mean, I've got my that photo that I took right in there. So you can see how useful that is to have all of that information, having the area image there and the photo there as well. Okay. One thing that I have found useful is to add a field to your instrument table that is basically just a yes/no field that's called omit from focus charts, and we'll get to this in a second. But you know, in this particular show, you've probably noticed that it's of course gonna be impossible to find now. But something like a moving light, right? You don't need a focus chart for a moving light because it's going to change all over. So maybe there's a tick box here that says, you know, omit from charts, yes or no, and then when we create our printing script later on, it will not show any records that you've chosen to omit from those charts. Same thing if you list some accessories like an IQ, or you know, if you do a C changer as a separate instrument, you don't want a focus chart for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we are going to make our focus chart. So I'm going to close my script editor for now, make sure everything is saved. And I'm going to start out with a layout that I already have, a printed layout that I already have, and I'm going to use instrument schedule because that has the most information on it. So I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to rename this to be focus charts, instrument records, great. And I'm going to open it. And let's see, I'm going to just move this guy off the screen for now and just work with this so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to start editing this focus charts layout. As you can see, it's already got lots of info here from of course, because we just copied in the instrument schedule layout. What I want to do is figure out, okay, what orientation do I want this in to start? Do I want to do two fixtures per page? Do I want to do one fixture per page? Tomorrow we're going to be talking about labels, and you could actually kind of get creative with creating a label report to do this if you wanted to show, let's say, 4 per page instead of just 1 per page. But we'll save that for tomorrow. Today I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my page setup, make sure that I am portrait, which I am. I'm just going to make this body bigger for now. I don't need this sub-summary anymore, but I want to save all this information. So I'm going to do part setup. delete that. Of course, you could leave it there if you wanted to do, you know, by position or something. I'm going to do these by channel number. We have our header there we want. We're actually going to create a new layout object, a new layout part that we haven't used before. And that is going to be a title header part. And I'm going to check this box here that says restart, just title header. So what the title header is going to be is it's going to basically be the thing that prints on the first page of our printed reports. And I kind of cheat and I use this to actually become, if we go into preview here, I can use this to actually become a cover page, which is kind of cool. Let me show you an example of this. I'm going to open up my my solution here, and you can see I've actually got a layout editor built. Oops, I got a layout editor built right in. So in this layout here, this is one of my spot queue sheets. If I look at this, I've got a title header that has all of this information here about, you know, what is coming, and then my header, and then all my other stuff. It looks very complicated, but there's a lot of cool information in there. And you can see I've got a title header here. I've got header. I've got a sub summary here. This is when I sort it by scene, so that it prints the scene breaks and stuff like that. But those are the parts that I have in that. I'm gonna leave that open so we can reference it in case we need it. Okay, so on this title header, I'm just going to make it nice and big for now, and I'm going to let's put some text in there. Let's say focus charts. And maybe we make that nice and big, maybe size 40. Move all this stuff off so I don't have those guides getting in my way. I do want my margins in this case. Okay. Focus charts. And now here on this title page, maybe, you know, if you were playing around with your admin thing, maybe you have a show name in there. Maybe you have, you know, show dates. You could put all that kind of stuff in here. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab a graphic of my layout like this. I'm going to paste that in here. The idea there. And then maybe I'm going to put a key here as well. I'm going to say, you know, common abbreviations. And actually, I'm just going to copy paste it from mine rather than wasting all of your time doing that. Let's go over to, let's see, reports. Where is focus charts? Here we go, focus charts. There we go. So you see, here's mine. I've got show name, company logo, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to copy paste this. Put those abbreviations there, and now when I print this, it's going to just be like a nice cover page for me, which is great. Okay. Next up, you know, I'll tell you what. Let's just look at mine as we do this. It's going to be easier than going through and reinventing the wheel, right? I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay. Zoom out a little bit here too. Sorry, we're running a little long today. We probably should be another 10 minutes or so, and I think we'll be in business. You can see in my solution over here on the left, I actually have several photos available. There is instrument detail photo. I've got 2 different focus photos available, and then of course I have that graphic. And what I do is I have anything that's shown about that particular focus area is shown over here, and then anything that's about the instrument is shown over here. So kind of cool. And let's do, I'm just going to do a simple header for now, and we're going to call this focus charts. And then within my focus chart, I'm going to do channel. Don't necessarily need dimmer and circuit information. Maybe I want this channel to be nice and big. Something like that. I don't need, like I said, I don't need a unit. I don't need this information, but I do probably want my instrument type. Probably want my purpose. Move some of this stuff over. Of course, these are leftovers from the instrument schedule. And I probably want my color, my gobo, just like that. And then I probably want all of that information that we set up on that earlier layout. So I'm going to do a new window. Oh wait, I don't need to because I just dragged it off screen. That's right. So I'm going to come back in here into layout mode, and I'm just going to really just grab basically all of this like that. And I'm going to deselect the tabs and deselect the box, and then just copy this, paste it all right here. And make those a little bit. Area image, focus photo. Again, you spend the time making this look nice. I'm just making it functional. Get this off of our screen so it's not confusing anymore. And now let's start looking at how this looks. Okay, we've got those there. We've got we could preview this. Looks like we need to create a little more space. That's fine. Get the idea, right? Where is that? Why is that not working? Oh, I need to put this down in the footer, obviously. A little bit bigger. Now, you can do this two ways. You know, what I was just doing is I was playing around with the size of that. That's technically not the best way to do this. What I believe I could do is I could actually come in here and I could make, I could do part setup. I could add a leading grand summary and then do restart or page break after occurrence. And then what I'll do, did I do that wrong? I did that wrong. Okay, so for right now, I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger until it fits onto one page. Sorry, I should have been more prepared for that. There we go. As I go through, you see this is pretty much giving me a page per instrument now, and of course I can sort those however I want. In fact, let's do that real quick. Let's sort by isn't my... Oh, duh, because I've got to be in this mode. Okay, so I'm going to sort by channel. And now, of course, when we go into preview mode, channel 1, there's that info, there's that picture we made, all that stuff. So you can lay these out, you know, in a really powerful way. So tomorrow when we talk about labels, I'm going to show you how you can cheat a little bit and make a label layout that does this. There's not really a great way, at least to my knowledge, now I could be wrong, and please somebody correct me if I am, that I could say, all right, you know, this body needs to take up half the page. I could, you know, I could do the math with the ruler and everything. So instead, we could actually create a label and tell it, all right, we're going to print 4 labels per page, and then we just lay out one, and then it'll print those 4. So again, that'll make a little bit more sense tomorrow. Of course, this graphic right here, which I accidentally stretched out a little bit, you know, yeah, you don't necessarily want to drop that into your layout, kind of hard-coded like that every single time. So you could set this up in a couple of different ways. You could have, really the 2 ways you could do it is you could have on your admin table, you could have this like master graphic and have this be a container. The other thing you could do is you could make it a global field on your focus area records. I'm not going to get into global fields today. We can talk about those another time. The challenge with doing it on the admin layout is now we'd have to start defining relationships between our admin table and these other tables. So it gets a little bit more complicated. So actually, let's go ahead. Let's look at doing it the other. Let's look at it real quick, and then I'll sign off for the day. Okay, so I want to open up my focus areas table. And I'm going to create a master graphic container. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that. And here under storage, I'm going to make this a global storage field. So this is kind of similar to a global variable in that, you know, it's available throughout the entire, through an entire set of the file. I think it can be a little confusing because it's not necessarily it's using the same value for every single record in this table. So if I were to drop, let's say, this image into that container, it's going to be the same for every single one of my focus areas. Hopefully that makes sense, and we can, I'm going to get rid of it for now, and then let's add focus areas, master graphic. Something like that. Okay, and then when I go back into my, where is it? Focus areas. I just need to define that somewhere. So I could do, let's say, drop the master graphic over here. For now, I'm just going to leave it big like that. And you can see when I paste this in, that now shows up for every single one of those those records. So maybe you do a separate layout where you define that, or maybe it's just, you know, maybe it's useful to have, you know, the context of that here on your layout. It's really up to you, but you get the idea there. And now when I come back over here to focus charts and I go to preview, it's going to show up just like that on that title page. So quick and easy way to do it. I would recommend, at least for starting out, that you do it that way instead of trying to do an admin table with those things. On mine, of course, I do have that admin table. It does get really complex with how the relationships are set up, but this works for what it is. And of course, you could also, you know, these abbreviations, you could make this a global field and show it that way. Totally possible. Totally possible, totally doable. It really just depends on how you want to lay it out. Okay, so I think that's all of the new content I have for today. You know what we should do? Okay, I've got, let's say, 4 more minutes left. I'm going to create a quick script that we can automatically hide and show our instruments on these focus charts from. So first thing I'm going to do is in my instruments field here, I'm going to add that omit from chart field. And I want to make this automatically say no. Okay, and of course it's not going to really do anything for us right now because we already have all of those instruments in here. Data entry instruments. Excuse me, I want to be on Focus Assistant. And so in my Focus Assistant here, under the Focus tab, I'm going to add a show hide here. Omit from chart, and this is going to be, we'll have to make a new value list. So I like to always, I probably should have done this on day 1. I like to make a value list that is a simple yes, no. So we have yes and we have no. You could have true, false. You could have, you know, whatever you wanted there. But it just allows you to, you know, you can reference this as many times as you need on different things. Okay. Omit from chart. So now what I can do is I can come in here and I can say omit this from the chart. And of course, right now there's no value in there because we've already imported all these instruments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a quick little script here that will just go through and add that. I'm going to label it temp, and I'm going to say show all records, go to record first, loop, set field, omit from chart, and I'm going to say no. So basically what this is doing is it's going to go through all of my records. Whoops. It's going to go through all of my records, and it's going to just put that in. You do not have to do this. If you just re-imported your Lightwrite again, then since we set up in our thing here that it had an auto enter, it would automatically do that. It's just not going to do that now because we already have these instruments. So if I click this button once, now we see all my charts. It says no. So I could go ahead and I could choose. Let's just say I want to omit channel 1. Great. So everything else is no except for channel 1. So then what I'll do is here under my printing scripts and this print paperwork, I'm going to do add another else if, and we're going to say if report type is focus charts. We're going to do a go to layout. focus charts, print setup, making sure that we're portrait, good. And then I'm going to add one more little step in here, and that's going to be a perform find. And we want to find our records where omit from chart equals no. And then we're going to sort them by channel number, and then we'll say by unit number after that in case there's two next to each other. Okay. So report type equals focus charts. Now, where did we do that? We did that all over here on our admin screen, right? Where did we do that? Oh, printing. Where did we create? Oh, we did the PDF. That's right. So right here, PDF selection, we need to add focus charts to this value list. So where is that? That is under report types, and we're going to say focus areas. So now in theory, I can come in here and say focus areas PDF, and I'm just going to leave it as untitled for now. We'll open that up. What did I do wrong? Report type equals focus charts. Let's double check here. What did I do? Print paperwork. And PDF selection. Oh, focus charts, Mike, not focus areas. Focus charts. Once again, this is why I shouldn't do things that I didn't plan on having in the session, because I make mistakes. Okay. So now we do focus charts, PDF, save it as untitled. And now if we go in and we look at, of course, it's going to take a while because it's generating a page for every single one of our report, or every single one of our instruments right now. But if we look at it, here's that. And look at that, right to channel 2. It omitted channel 1. So you can see how powerful that is very quickly. And then just to double check that it worked, let's come back into our focus assistant again. We'll go to channel 1. And we will say, yes, we want it, or we don't want to omit it from the chart. And we'll create this again. Oops, I accidentally emailed the work notes. Hey, at least we know that still works. Made a little email here, great. Okay, focus charts. Oh God, everything is going crazy. Okay, focus charts. Save as untitled. Great, so while we're waiting for this to generate, if there's any questions about anything, please throw them in the chat. Thank you all for bearing with me through these last couple of technical snafus. Let's just double check here. There it is. Area or channel 1 is back again. So again, super useful for scrollers, for accessories, for anything that you don't need a focus chart for. House lights, work lights, moving lights, etc., etc. And then of course you could get pretty smart with some scripts, and you could have it recognize certain fixture types and say, okay, well, if the, we talked about doing a meta type earlier, and say, all right, well, if the meta type is moving light, omit from chart. If the meta type is accessory, remove from chart, etc., etc. So great. So that's all the content I have for today. I hope to see you all again tomorrow, same time, for some label reporting stuff. And then later on this week, on Thursday, I believe, I'm going to be doing a basic connection to EOS, which is going to be super great, especially for this focus assistant, because we'll be able to create some buttons to turn lights on and off automatically for you. You can study up for that. I do have a video kind of as a rough overview of how that works currently on my channel in this exact same FileMaker playlist. The difference between that video and the one we're going to do on Thursday is going to be, that video is more about creating something from scratch. This one we're going to do on Thursday is going to be how to integrate something into a solution like this that we already have. So great. I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes to answer any other questions. Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much. All right, looks like we got nothing coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. If you are in the middle of typing something, I'll watch the chat for a few more minutes. Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much.